I just finished watching Adolescence on Netflix, and to say that it affected me would be a gross understatement. I was deeply moved by that series. If you haven't seen it yet and you're a parent of young children, especially young boys, I highly recommend that you go and watch it. And it got me thinking about a lot, and I am going to relate this to your health and fitness, but the way that adolescence affected me, and then the responses that I got from people when I did a post about how it affected me is what inspired me to do this live stream, because I haven't broken down into tears from watching anything for a very, very long time, to the extent where my 8-year-old son said to me recently, "Why don't you ever cry, Daddy? I don't ever see you cry." And I didn't really have an answer for him. But after watching the final episode of Adolescence, I was in pieces for hours. It affected me on such a deep level for many, many reasons. You know, being a father of a young boy, and, you know, imagining that what happens in that show could happen to my son, and you know what that family goes through, and seeing the way that it affects the family and the father, especially at the end of the last episode, was very, very moving for me. And I did a post on Facebook afterwards. I did a post that said something like, "I just finished watching Adolescence and it's made me reconsider so much. It was a rude awakening, and I'm going to do so much better. I'm really going to step up." And so many people commented on my post. I had people sending me direct messages saying things like, "Don't be so hard on yourself. You know, the Rad I know is an incredible father. You're doing a great job," things like that. And I think that's a real problem, because I think we're not hard enough on ourselves. I think the idea of saying to people, you know, "You're doing a great job," and reinforcing that change isn't necessary is not the right way forward. And I'm fortunate enough that my wife is very proactive about learning how to raise our son in a way that's going to prepare him for the world, and hopefully turn him into a well-adjusted man and a well-adjusted teenager, before that, a well-adjusted adolescent. So my wife shares a lot with me, and then when she reads something that's really profound to her, she'll give it to me, and I'll read it. And so she's got a far greater knowledge about this topic than I do, but I do what I can to keep up. And a recent book that I'm halfway through it, she's read it, called "Hold On to Your Kids" by Gabor Mate and another psychologist, people who have dedicated decades of their careers in psychology to understanding children's psychology. And, you know, they talk about this subject like it is dire, like we need a real change in the world, in the way that the concept of it is being that children are being more peer-led than they are being parent-led. They're learning to adjust into adulthood by influence of their peers more than by influence of their parents, which is a major issue. And the big culprits are parents that are having to work way too long to be able to spend time with their children, and they're not creating that attachment with their child. Having a mentality around that we should try to create independence in our children far too soon, when what we should be trying to do is foster dependence, that they feel dependent on us until a much later stage at life, that this is the way that things used to be before people were having to work. You know, in the last couple of generations, I can't remember the exact time frame, but it's a very short amount of time in the grand scheme of things. The average father works 20 hours a week more than they used to, maybe it was one generation ago. So that 20 hours is 20 hours a week less spent with the mother, you know, spent putting time into the relationship, spent with the children, fostering a relationship. And it all has this cost, right? It all has a big it all compounds, and what it really affects is the relationship that you have with your child, which is the best thing that you can do in order to prevent them being peer-led so that they follow your influence more. And so without going too far down that rabbit hole, Alana, my wife, had been trying to impress this on me for a while, and a big part of me was resisting it, saying it's not that bad, and when I watched this, because I was part the way through the book that she was getting me to read, Hold On to Your Kids, and when I watched that show and to see what can happen, and then I've watched a few pieces of content from other child psychologists that Alana has shared with me that's driven it home that, if you're a parent, we are in real need of change. We really are. The way that we're doing things, the way that in Western society, the way that our children are being raised, the access that they have to the internet. I mean, something that we watched last night, this psychologist was saying how he was speaking to a nurse recently, and she said the amount of young girls, teenage girls, that are coming into emergency from asphyxiation injury, sexually related, meaning that during the course of sex, boys are asphyxiating them, and he's saying things like, where did this come from? Where are these boys learning to do this stuff? And of course it's from pornography and from the internet. And so, there's I'm not a child psychologist, so I am tying this into something that's relevant to what you guys come to my channel for. But the point, it's in all honesty, it's making me very emotional right now, even just to talk about this. When I watched Adolescence, and it was this real rude awakening for me, and I did this post, and I did a post on Facebook because my intention behind, I don't normally do this stuff. My Facebook page, I don't have a lot of friends on there because I do so much social media for my business. So my Facebook page is Hidekel77 is saying they're normalizing ancient hedonism. You're right. You're absolutely right. It was really interesting to hear this child psychologist say, a generation ago, the stuff that kids can get access to online with one click used to be illegal to sell to adults. It used to be illegal to sell to people over the age of 18, well, still is, child porn and things like that. And kids with access to the internet can just get it with a click, just by clicking a button that says, I am over the age of 18. It's shocking. Anyway, my point is, I did this post on Facebook where as I said, I'll bring up the post so you can read so I can read out what I said. And my idea was to try to hopefully inspire some people that I know who are parents to maybe consider the way that they're doing things in the same way that Alana and I are considering the way that we're doing things. So I said, I just finished Adolescence on Netflix. That is without a doubt the most impactful, moving and emotional show I have ever seen. It's made me take a hard look at myself in ways I never have before. And there is a lot I'm going to change about the way I parent and how much of myself I give to my son. I think my generation of parents takes the easy way out far too often with parenting. I hope this show is as much a wake-up call for you as it has been for me. If you've seen it, please don't post any spoilers. I have friends that haven't finished it yet. If you haven't seen it and you have kids, I'd argue it's the most important thing you'll ever watch. And then there's a whole bunch of comments from people saying, some people were saying, I watched it the other night, it was completely shocking. And then I got a whole bunch of DMs from people, trying to pat me on the back and say, you're doing a really good job, Rad. You're a great person. You're a great dad. From what I've seen of you, you're an incredible father. And this is my point of saying this. I think that we need more of a wake-up call in more areas of our life than what we think. Because to quote Gabor Mate from Hold On to Your Kids, societal shifts normally occur over generations. So when we look at the way that society has changed through history, it's normally over multiple generations that we have big societal shifts. In the last 10 years, society has changed more than in the 100 years before it because of, guess why? The internet. So it's a phenomenon that us as parents who are working our butts off and who are just trying to keep it all together and trying to keep the mortgage paid and trying to, give the best that we can to our kid, trying to meet the demands of work, trying to keep our relationship alive. We take the easy way out too often. And I see this happen when we spend time socially with our son's friends' parents, and we are really big on, we don't let him go and have sleepovers yet. We're a long way off doing that. This is a big part of the book, Hold On to Your Kids. So we're there when he socializes with his friends. And the way that other parents are so much more relaxed with letting their kids go into a room on a computer or on a smartphone. And, a big wake-up call that we've had is that a couple of times that this has happened, when we've been there and we've gone in to check on our son and what they're doing, but then at the end of the play date, he starts, when we come home, he starts quoting these things that are really adult content, things that he's seen when he was in the next room on the internet. And this idea of, you're doing a great job, you're okay. I think that's a really wrong way to approach this. I think that we need a really big wake-up call that the internet is so much more dangerous for children than what parents are realizing. And this whole point of this show, Adolescence, if you've seen it and if you watched the last episode, is that these parents are good parents. They really thought they were doing the right thing. But the internet and the allowance of being peer-led is what led to this child's downfall. And it's really shocking. And the reason I'm saying this to you guys is because I want to relate this to your health and fitness, because I think that what a lot of people are doing, like when you look at parenting, and this is one of the biggest wake-up calls that I had. So I've changed a lot since I watched that show. It was only a week ago. And in the last week, I have made a significant effort to be there for my son when he asks me to play with him in the way that he wants to play. I didn't used to do that. I used to say, no, I don't feel like doing that. I'm too tired. Let's do this. And Alana used to get so upset at me for it. But in the last week, I've really changed that. I've really, my son always says to me, let's play handball or let's wrestle. And in the last week, I've just done it with him. I do it before school. I do it after school. And there's been a noticeable shift in his demeanor. And Alana points it out to me. She keeps saying, look at how different Keanu is. He's so much more relaxed. He's so much more receptive of us saying, it's time for you to do this. It's time to do that. And he's far less disobedient. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't get frustrated as much. It's quite profound how much of a change it's had in him in just a few days since Sunday or Monday night, whenever we watched the final episode. I think it was Sunday. So, the reason I did that is because that show really made me realize, which, I shouldn't have needed to watch a show to realize this. We only get one chance when we raise children. When you get to a point where they're a teenager, and this is what this book talks about, Hold On to Your Kids, when you'll get to a certain point where there is nothing that you'll be able to do to bring your child back into your sphere of influence and to be able to steer them in a direction that you want. When they get to a point, when they get to a certain threshold with being peer-led, you will have lost the battle, and that'll be the end of it. And your health and fitness is, in a way, it's similar. It's not as bad. You can always, and I preach this a lot. I train people in their 60s and even in their 70s. The majority of our members in the UMS, in the Unified Movement System online coaching, the majority are in their 30s and 40s, and then probably 50s is the next. But we have some people in their 60s and 70s and some people in their 20s. And even people in their 60s and 70s, you can still improve your health and fitness. You can. But when you're over the age of 35, I'd say, would be this real cutoff point. That's the time when you, as a man, your testosterone starts to plummet, and biologically, the way that our bodies, are on the rise in our 20s, that really peaks in our mid 30s and starts to drop off. The further you allow your health and fitness to slide, the harder it's going to be to get back to where you want it to be, and the more work you're going to have to put in. And I've found that out the hard way myself. Like, if you follow the content that I put out, the Elysium, I'm going to respond to you in a minute. The content that I put out, I share my story a lot. And my story, in a nutshell, I did Kung Fu and I did martial arts right through my 20s, and I was good at it, but I didn't do any real strength training for my upper body. I got into the army at age 30. I served as an infantry soldier. I fractured my spine. I came out, I dealt with that issue in my spine and overcame the pain, and then I decided I wanted to start calisthenics, and I just didn't have the strength and the foundation for it. And my body just systematically broke down. I just got injury after injury after injury until I was forced to create a better way to train, because none of the coaches, none of the experts that I was reaching out to could teach me how to train for structural balance that also pursued movement mastery in things like calisthenics and more advanced weightlifting movements, and that also combined flexibility into the training. There was nobody else. There was nobody that I could find that could do that. And believe me when I say I tried everything, and I worked with world-class coaches, and that's what forced Yanni and me, my brother Yanni and I, to create the unified movement system, because there just wasn't a solution out there. And after creating that system, I've had to basically rebuild my body. I've had to rebuild myself from these horrendous slap tears and golfer's elbow and wrist injuries and, all these problems that I've had in my body. And so the reason I'm saying this is that you can do this, but I want to, before I respond to some of the comments that are coming in here, the reason I did this and why I talked about adolescence, something that's affected me so deeply, is that it made me think about the amount of you that are watching, that watch content like what I put out, that go through YouTube and watch content to get more flexible, to fix your slap tear, to lose fat, to build more muscle, whatever it is. And then you don't take the action that's required to actually achieve the results that you want. And we live in this society where people are patting people on the back and saying, don't worry, you're doing a great job, when really you could be doing more. And this is what inspired me to do this live stream today, because when I was getting told about parenting, don't worry, Rad, you're doing a great job, I could feel in my heart, I'm like, no, I could be doing better, and I could be doing much better at one of the most important things that I'll ever do in my life, raise my son. I really could be doing better. And if I listened to everybody saying, don't worry, you're doing a good job, and change nothing, it actually makes me feel quite sick in my stomach to think of where things could lead, And the same thing happens with health and fitness. I work with people who have not taken action soon enough, who have not made these changes early enough in their life, and who are really feeling it, and who are really feeling the pain and the suffering of living in a body that isn't thriving. And, we only get one chance to raise our children. You don't get a do-over. You don't get an opportunity to say, well, I fucked that up. I'm going to go back and do it again. And the same happens with our bodies. When our bodies get to a certain point of disarray with our health and fitness, you don't get a do-over. You don't get to do it. You get one chance with your body and with your health and fitness. So ask yourself if you're really doing enough. Are you really prioritizing your health and fitness enough? Or are you succumbing to the level of everybody around you and the norm of what's okay, and just operating at that level and maybe just teetering above it a little bit? Because I know that for myself, that's the choice that I made when I was in my mid-30s. I looked around at what and for me, my circle of influence was personal trainers. And I looked around at the average personal trainer who'd been in the industry for 10 years, like me back then. And most of us, we just accept that our best years are behind us, and the way that we could perform 10 years ago is not the way that we can now, and we just let that go. And that wasn't enough for me, and I decided that I was going to step up and continue to improve myself. And I'm just so happy that that is a decision that I made, because I'm about to turn 47, and despite life-changing injuries that I was told I'd need surgery for, that I was told I'd never be able to do X, Y, and Z again, I'm thriving. And I'm thriving because I didn't settle for the status quo. I wanted more for myself. So Elysium has said, that's good advice. I have 3 sons, and sometimes I don't have time, and I notice how their character change if I don't play with them. But sometimes life is too exhausting, but I must plan better. You know what, man? I feel you. I'm telling you right now, it was only a week ago that, for me, I would come upstairs, because this is downstairs for my house. So I work at home. And I work out a lot, so I'm pretty exhausted. I get up at 5 a.m. Long before my family gets up. 2 or 3 days a week, I go for a run in the morning, and I'm working until, depending on the day, 4:30, 5:30, sometimes later. And by the time I get upstairs, I'm just exhausted. And I walk in, and my son is just filled with energy. And he's like, Dad, let's play handball. Let's have a wrestle. Let's do this. And what I used to do was give him a couple of minutes of my time, and that was it. And this show really, it's this show that gave me the rude awakening, but the tools that I'm learning, and this is interesting, that I'm about to say the tools that I'm learning from this book, Hold On To Your Kids, which, Elysium, I highly recommend that you watch, listen to or read. I'm listening to the audiobook, which is on Spotify, if you've got a premium account. They actually say that parents come to them all the time saying, what are the tools? Teach me some tools that I can use to be able to, get my child to stop behaving this way, or to do more of this, or to do more of that. And they say that that's the complete wrong approach. There are no tools. There isn't a set of tools that you can learn that you'll implement that are going to do it. The thing that you can do more than anything else is to create an attachment bond with your child, where you create a very, very strong attachment and a strong dependency, where they feel dependent with you and they feel a connection with you. And what was really interesting was they talk about how when you have, for me, and I'm only up to chapter 6, so I'm just short of halfway. No, I'm about to start chapter 7. So I'm just shy of halfway through the book. And my wife keeps telling me, wait till you get to chapter 12 and 13. It's mind-blowing. But they talk about how much more likely your child is to do the things that you do when they have a strong attachment bond, which is really interesting, because I've had people say to me many times on social media, how can I inspire my child to exercise and to work out like I do? Well, the best way you can do it is to create a strong attachment bond with them. And just in this last couple of days, since I've been strengthening the attachment bond with my child, he's said to me twice, Dad, can I come and do a workout with you tomorrow? And he's come downstairs with me after school in my home gym and done a workout with me when we've finished school. It's been incredible to see. It's been a really powerful experience to see how that's influenced him. And so Elysium saying, I think it has to do much how our parents raised us. My father never took time for me, and I think this is something that gets passed on, and we must break the chains. I will look into the book, brother. I couldn't agree more. It's monkey see, monkey do. And our parents are most likely baby boomers, which means that they are of the generation post-World War II. And when you look at baby boomers had a work ethic like very few others. They came out of the war with the belief that, well, they were born just after the war. My father was born in, I think, 1947 or 1948 in Germany. My dad's German, so imagine being born in Germany post-World War II, what was going on over there, and what they were, the fallout that they were having from the war. Like, that was just a country that was hanging their heads in shame. And My mother was born in the early 50s, and they were raised with a belief that you can achieve anything if you work hard enough. And so they worked hard. So I know what you're talking about. I know that feeling. But, the things that I've changed and what I used to try to think, how can I get Kiani to do this better? How can I be better at that? How can I be better at that? And what I've seen in the last week is, yes, it's effort, it's energy. I'm not going to say that the energy isn't hard, but it's actually a lot simpler than you think. It's literally just connect with them on what they want to connect with. And so my son says, I want to play handball. I play handball with him. And I just sit there and I've played with him for, I won't say hours, but multiple times a day, like maybe twice in the morning and twice in the evening, like before dinner and then again after dinner. And then when he asks for a wrestle, I give him a wrestle on the bed. And the other day, for the first time ever, my son has started to get into these books called Dog Man, these sort of comic books. And he's sitting on the couch reading the other morning on Tuesday morning, and he said, Dad, do you want to read with me? And my gut impulse, this is what I would have done a week ago. I would have said, I'm so sorry, buddy. I don't have time to do that now. I'm getting ready for work. And I just stopped what I was doing and I said, yep, sure thing, buddy. And I went over and I grabbed a book that my brother bought for me recently that I've been meaning to read. It's called Be Water, My Friend by Shannon Lee, Bruce Lee's daughter. It's a great book. I'm really getting into it. And I just sat there and sat next to him and read with him for as long as he wanted to read for, which was about 20 minutes. And it's just doing things like that. It's just finding that within you, that when you see your children say, Dad or Mum, will you do this with me? That you just go, yes, I will. And you have to give up time for it. You have to give up energy for it. But by God, when I look at that show Adolescence and you look at, what the risk versus reward is, it's just so far out of balance, the risk versus reward, that it's not even funny. So that's something that it's a price that I'll pay any day. Elysium is saying, that's why I train and I keep my body strong and healthy and mobile, to have the energy to play with them, even if I sometimes have no energy because of life. Your advice is solid. We must find the child in us that we never had. Couldn't agree more. And it's breaking habits, it's breaking patterns. And it's what, when we relate it to health and fitness, it's the same thing with health and fitness. I know that if you're watching this right now, of course you care about health and fitness. Why on earth would you be looking at content from me, a fitness professional, on a channel called Unity Gym? If you're watching this, then you're more passionate about health and fitness than the average person, by far. The average person is not investing their time to listen to a fitness professional, do a live stream. So you guys are already winning the race with health and fitness. You've already got the thing inside you that so few people have, which is a desire to get better with your health and fitness and to learn more and to learn from somebody who's living the life. So ask yourself if you're really doing as much as you can, because I bring it back to the reason why I wanted to do this live stream. The idea of people patting each other on the back, and I get it. I get that it comes from a good place. I get that we're in a society where depression and suicide are on the rise, and it is important to say to people, to comfort them and say, it's okay. It is important to do that. But it's also important to reinforce the need for change, the need to do things differently if you want something different. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And change only comes from this, like it starts with a burning desire to really want something else, want something that you don't currently have. And then recognizing the work that has to be done and making those hard decisions to say, I'm going to commit to this, I'm going to make this commitment. And I've had to rethink the way that I prioritize my time and the way that I do things, in my day, I've had to rethink about how much time do I procrastinate on things where I could be, producing a result that's going to free up an extra half an hour that I can spend with my son in the morning. And in all honesty, for you guys that watch my shows regularly, this is the whole reason why I didn't do a live stream on Tuesday, because I made a commitment earlier this year that I was going to do live streams at 8 a.m. every day, every week on Tuesday and Thursday. And I actually had to pull myself up and say, I actually need to make a commitment that I'm going to spend an extra half an hour in the morning with my son rather than doing that. That's more important for me than, doing these live streams and then putting that effort into my business, because I put so much effort into my business already. I need to find a way to give more to my son. And that's a commitment that I've made. And it's something that I actually feel really good about, because in all honesty, and this is why I did that Facebook post, it rocked me when I watched that show and when I reflected on the book that I'm reading, the concept of attachment, parenting, holding on to your kids, and then I looked at what I was doing and the way that I was doing things. And it really gave me a rude awakening. It really did. It really, I couldn't hide from the fact that I could do so much better than what I'm doing. It was just staring me in the face, and it brought up so much emotion for me. I haven't cried like I did then I don't even remember how long. I was in and out of crying from when we finished the show at 7 p.m. until I went to bed. I still had tears in my eyes when I was laying in bed, going to sleep. It was such a profound experience for me. And, it's a shame that we often need a rude awakening before we make change. That's a shame, I think. But it is human nature. It's human nature that we push things until the point of no return. I mean, this happens in relationships. When relationships end, it's such a common thing. It's a common theme that women aren't getting what they want from their husbands. And when the marriage breaks down and ends, that the husband's there going, I never saw this coming. I didn't see it. I wish I could have done things differently. And that's what was such an emotional thing for me, because if you've seen Adolescence, when you see the way that the parents are having that moment where they're saying, I really thought we were doing things the right way, it's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to say the least. And so when you think about this with your health and fitness, in my career, I see this a lot. I see this when people come to me in such a bad state of health, when they've let things go to a point where they're at a high risk of heart disease, high risk of stroke. And it's that severe decline in health that makes them think, I need to change, I need to do things. And it's just so unfortunate that we let things get to that way. And you don't even need to be in that state. You might be, in fact, considering what our average audience is, I would wager that most of you aren't at that level. I would wager that most of you are already at a much higher level of your health and fitness than the average person, and that are already committing more to your health and fitness than the average person. But then you have to look at, am I really doing everything that I can to achieve my goals with the time that I do spend on my health and fitness? Am I doing the right things? Am I following a process that is going to build on itself every month to get me closer to my goals? Or am I just preventing myself from going backwards? And maybe that's all you want. Maybe all you want in life is to prevent yourself from going backwards. But I know that that's not enough for me. And I know that I know that the Elysium Adolescence isn't a movie, it's a mini series. It's a 4-part series on Netflix. And if you do watch it with your partner and watch it without any distractions. And I recommend, because it's, pretty much 4 hours to watch, it's good to watch it in 2 chunks. Watch the first 2 episodes in one go, watch the second 2 episodes in one go. So it's like you're watching 2 movies. But ask yourself, really challenge yourself. Ask yourself if you're doing enough. Ask yourself if you could be doing more in your life in the areas that really matter to you. Because being a good parent and raising my son is one of the top priorities in my life. Protonovan is saying, what are we watching? I'm talking about the way that Adolescence, the series on Netflix, has impacted me. If you go to YouTube, you can watch the whole thing. And ask yourself if you're doing enough. If you're really, if you're really doing all that you could do. And it's not always about, can I give more time? I'm not saying that. I'm saying, are you being smart with the time that you've got? Are you putting your effort into the things that are going to produce results? Or how much time are you investing in watching content, but then not actioning on it, not actually putting it into practice, not using that invested time into making change in your life that produces a result? Because for me, that's a time sink that I don't like to go down. It really isn't. Hidekel77 has said a couple of things on Instagram that I haven't responded to. Hang on, how do I get rid of that? You're saying there is a reason why scams like Liver King and more are normal for many to do. This would be shamed in public back then. Yeah, you're right. It would. It's a real, I can't believe that guy and that story. In history, Liver King would be shamed by society now. Many would be inspired to do the same. Why not? Benefits the individual. Who cares about society? That's the world today. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, I can't believe I'm not exposed to it face to face, but I watch other fitness influencers, other YouTubers, and they're, shining a spotlight on the steroid epidemic in young men. I mean, a lot of these are young boys, boys that are teenagers are taking steroids. It's just unbelievable. Like the health implications of that are just so bad. And yeah, it comes back to this access to the internet, this unrestricted access to the internet that adolescents have. It's a catastrophe waiting to happen. It really is. Anyway, look, guys, I know this was a very, very different kind of a stream and a kind of a show for me, but it's something that I feel really passionate about. And I thought about, because I couldn't stop thinking about this, I started to think about how I can relate this to health and fitness and how I can relate this to something that could provide value for you guys. So I hope for those of you that have watched this and that have stayed with me on this stream, that you got something valuable out of this. I hope that it's helped inspire some thought and made you think a little bit. For anyone who's a parent out there of young children, highly recommend you watch the mini-series Adolescence, and I highly recommend that you read a book called Hold On To Your Kids by Gabor Mate. You can listen to it on Spotify if you've got Spotify Premium. I've got no affiliation with any of this stuff. I'm not making any money off this. I'm not giving you guys an affiliate link. I'm just sharing something that's had a profound impact on me. And as a parent, it's inspired me to do better. And I think that we all need inspiration to do better at times, especially those of us that are parents. Because when we're parents, man, you just get so bogged down into the routine of it there's just so much that you have to do, and you're just going through the motions and just trying to keep your head above the water and trying to, find that small amount of time for yourself to be able to, stay healthy and fit and to be able to do anything that resembles a hobby of yours, Yeah. Hidel Curl 77 is saying it's an obsession to feel attractive. Men have lost the real meaning of being men. It was to work on character. I couldn't agree more. I think I'm not going to detract at all about the issues that are, going on in society from, what a lot of people call a matriarchy. No, a patriarchy. What am I saying? But there is I witness what I believe to be a real problem in the world for young men, because there's, this spotlight has been shone on, what's called toxic masculinity, and there's an element to this movement that has real grounds in it. When you look at where it's come from, the movement of feminism and of women's liberation. There was a real reason for that to happen. But we do now live in a society where young men are getting a very mixed message, and some of the messaging is that you should feel ashamed to be a man and to feel these masculine, these natural feelings. And I think you're very right. I think that when you combine that with peer-led development, young boys learning to be men by looking at influence from other young boys, it's a disaster waiting to happen. I really I really wonder what's going to happen with society, with the next generation, with the generation that my son's in, Generation Alpha, that are just coming into adulthood now and over the next decade, Generation Alpha and Beta. Al is saying procrastination parenting time tips. You want some tips on time tips? I've got a lot of those. Hideo Curl, sorry man, I have to scroll back on Instagram. I can't see those posts, but I will share my my time tips for procrastinating parents. And Singing Dancing Muscle Man, thanks for joining. Yeah, go back and have a listen to it. Tell me what you think. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. So I actually did a video recently on YouTube. So for those of you that want to know how, what my tips are for avoiding procrastination as a parent or being more productive as a parent, I've actually got a video on YouTube called Workout Motivation for Over 35s with Big Goals. And I talk about that exact topic. I was going to make it specific to parents, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to make it more general for anybody over the age of 35, which is why I titled it that title. But there's several things that we need to recognize with procrastination and with goals, with achieving goals, with setting goals, and with achieving goals. And the first thing that you want to do, you need to start with why. And if you haven't become really clear on why it is that you want to get healthy and fit, then motivation will always fail you. So there's a good book you can read called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. But it's the idea of asking yourself, why do I want to work out? Well, I want to lose weight. Why do I want to lose weight? Because I want to look good. Why do I want to look good? Because it makes me feel better. Why do I want to feel better? Like, you keep asking yourself the question why until you get to a deep emotional driver to the reasoning why you're working out. And I've heard a good saying, if your why doesn't make you cry, then it's not your why. It should really bring up a lot of emotion for you when you really go deep on why it is that you want to work out. And once you become clear on that why, you really hold on to it. because your goals with working out are what we call the spark that ignites the fire. That's the little spark that starts the little flame. But the fuel for the fire that turns that little flame into a raging inferno, because a flame can be blown out very easily, but a raging inferno, wind will just fuel it. And the fuel that turns that little flame into a raging inferno is your why. It's your deep emotional reason why you work out. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you really want to have a look at what you're doing in your life that is preventing you from working out and from keeping you from training and from procrastinating. What are the things that are going on in your life that create this head trash? And man, like I've been talking about the dangers of the internet for children, but the dangers of the internet for us adults are very real as well. Because the apps that we all use, the social media apps, YouTube, they are all built in a way to create addiction. They're built in a way to give an endorphin hit when you open them up and you scroll and you see little likes. Like, there's a really good documentary you guys should watch on Netflix, another one called The Social Dilemma. And a lot of the people that they interview in The Social Dilemma are the people that created the original algorithms for Instagram and Facebook, the people that created the like button on Facebook. And these same people, now that they've seen the impact that it's had on society and especially children, they've resigned from social media and they have a complete blackout ban of social media for their children and their teenagers in their house. They are completely banned from it. You should go and have a look at it, because us as adults are affected by this just as much. And so the reason I'm saying this is, going from series to series on Netflix, when you finish one series, you search for the next series that you can find to fill the void that is now empty, that was being filled by the last series that you were binging. Doom scrolling on social media, whatever it is, whatever you do with your time that detracts from your ability to apply yourself to training, to physical betterment, you want to recognize those things and you want to eliminate them. It's been a big thing for me. And, my personal experience, I used to love playing video games, and that was a really hard thing for me to get rid of when I became a parent, because I just didn't have the time for it. And I had to look at all the things in my life that I was doing. I've had to go through all of this that I'm telling you guys about. So often achieving your goals and often finding the way to stop procrastinating is less about saying I'm going to do more and far more about recognizing the things that you're going to give up to create the space. And it's not just about creating space in your schedule to be able to do workouts. It's about creating mental space. It's about creating space where you can actually allow yourself to have a moment in a day where you actually don't need to be thinking about anything, where you can sit there with some peace of mind and not be thinking about, I've got to do this and I've got to do that. What am I going to do first? Or am I going to do that? Oh, I've got to get that. Like, to have space in your head where you don't do that. So that's another really important thing. The next thing is to align your goals with your daily habits. Your habits are everything. So you've got to look at what you do on habit. And when you look at habit, you'll actually realize that around 50 or 60% of what you do in a day is not by conscious choice. It's a habit. It's a habit loop that plays out. And our brains are designed to operate that way. Our brains are designed to create habits so that we don't have to think about things and we have more mental energy, because thinking uses energy. And the more you think, the more, so you can sit down, and anyone will have gone through times like this when you're sitting down and you're brainstorming something and you become fatigued and exhausted after several hours of doing it. You feel completely exhausted at the end of a day where you've done no physical activity, but you're mentally exhausted. And so our brains are wired in a way where we look to build habit with anything that we do so that we don't have to apply conscious thought to make that action happen. And the best example that I've seen of this is driving. When you first learn to drive, driving is a very 100% focus activity. And especially if you're my age, if you're in your 40s, you probably learned, well, maybe you were lucky enough, like me, to learn on a manual. And you had to learn how to, drive stick when you were younger. I mean, manuals barely even exist now. But, the amount of mental focus that was required to operate a vehicle when you were learning was very, very high. And after a certain amount of time, it becomes completely second nature. You can be sitting in a car having a conversation with somebody and be 100% focused on the conversation. And you'll arrive at your destination and kind of go, oof, how did we get here? And you drove there, you did everything right. You indicated when you were changing lanes, you stopped at stop signs, you didn't speed. You did everything right and you did it completely on autopilot. That's the power of habit. And so habit is there to serve us. It's there to allow us more capacity to be able to think and create with new things. But it also works at our detriment as well, because we have Dave is saying, what was my first car and do you still enjoy driving manual? So I learned how to drive on a Mitsubishi L300 Express, which was a 4-wheel drive van. That's what I learned to drive on. No power steering, hand over hand steering. And the first car I had was a Ford Laser, a 1982 Ford Laser manual. And yeah, I still enjoy driving stick, but I never do it. I never get the opportunity. But habit is just as beneficial for us as it is detrimental, because the same habits are what make you sit down at the end of the day and after dinner when you're watching Netflix, you go to the cupboard to get the Tim Tams. That's a habit. You might feel like you're making a choice, but it's a habit that's playing out. If you want to learn more about this, read a book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, or what was the other really big one? Atomic Habits. That's another really good book. And so I say all of that because you need to see whether your habits align with your goals. And when you can create exercise as a habit. Like for me, exercise is a habit. A habit takes a lot of work to create, but once it's created, it's very hard to break. And that's why breaking bad habits are very hard. But that's also a good thing, because breaking a good habit is also very hard. So for me, working out every day is a habit. It's actually hard for me to not work out. I feel anxiety if I'm not getting my workout done, because it's a habit for me. So you want to build healthy habits that are in alignment with your goals. And if your habits aren't in alignment with your goals, if there's a disparity between them, if they don't line up, you're always going to feel the gap between where you are and where you want to be. You must find a way to align your habits with your goals. Move heaven and earth to make that happen, my friend. Make it happen. And then the other one, how do I avoid procrastination? Practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is a practice of being present in every moment and recognizing the things that are going on around you and that are going on in our mind and acting in spite of them. It's not about this idea of this not having negative thoughts, of not having things that could detract you from where you are. It's acting in spite of them. And the best way that I've found to practice mindfulness and to learn mindfulness is through the Waking Up app, which you can get on your phone. It is a subscription, you have to pay for it, but they have a 30-day free trial. And again, I've got no affiliation with it. I have no affiliate code to give you that gives me a commission. It's just something that I've found to be extremely useful in my life because, what's his name? Sam Harris. Sam Harris is by far the greatest meditation teacher that I've ever encountered. I tried to learn how to meditate for 2 decades. I started trying to learn how to meditate when I was in my 20s, and I just could not do it. It was frustrating for me. Every app, every guided meditation that I ever used, I was never meditating. I'd constantly realize that I was thinking about something else or doing whatever. But the Waking Up app, Sam Harris is somebody who is Western trained with a PhD in neurobiology, I think, the science of the brain. But he has spent a decade learning meditation in Eastern practices. And as far as I know, he's the only person in the world, at least that I'm aware of, that has that level of education on two very opposing ways of looking at the brain. Very highly educated in Western science and the Western understanding of the brain and the way the brain works, and very highly educated and highly practiced and very bought in to Eastern practices on meditation. And the way that you do these 10-minute guided meditations with Sam Harris each day, there's the 30-day introduction course, which each day there's a new tool and a new technique to practice that builds on the last, and that he really makes you understand and feel very okay, and that it's completely normal that your brain wanders off and goes on a tangent. And he gives you real actionable tools to bring yourself back to the present and to practice mindfulness. And so I used that Waking Up app for a long period of time to learn mindfulness. And I really recommend that you guys do that, because mindfulness is a really, really important thing to practice in today's day and age. And if you want to, to go back to this question, if you want to learn how to avoid procrastination, then mindfulness is a really powerful tool to have in your toolbox. So Singing Dancing Muscle Man is saying, habits are what control your life. The habits you build will shape your destiny. Brandon Carter, it's absolutely right. It absolutely is. And you're saying no power steering. Whoa, yeah, man. This is a car from the early 80s. And it was a four-wheel drive car that was jacked up with big four-wheel drive tires on it. And I want to see if I can find a picture of it for you guys, because it's a really here we go. It's oh my God, that is literally the exact one that we had. That looks like it's almost the that looks like it's almost the same car. Let me bring this up. For those of you that are on YouTube, there you go. So that big yellow one, ours was yellow, like that, with a big bumper bar and big jacked up tires. That's what I learned to drive on. No power steering, manual, with a big, one of those big long sticks. So, when you were parked and you were having to come out of the park, it was like, you had to reef it with all your strength to get it to turn. It was hilarious. I remember when my first car was a Ford Laser that had power steering. That was something. But when I bought my second car, I bought a Mitsubishi Lancer, whatever it was, a 1998 model or something like that. And, with power steering, it was like night and day difference. But yeah, that's what being a Generation Xer is all about, learning how to drive with manual cars that have no power steering. Anyway. All right, team, thank you so much for giving me your attention. I hope you got something valuable out of this. And if you've made it this far, please hit the subscribe button on YouTube. It goes a long way to help me get my content out there and to help with the algorithm. For those of you on TikTok and Instagram, thank you so much for giving me your attention, for tuning in. Thanks for the wonderful comments that you guys have had, for the interaction. And I'll see you